What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week we are back on our 1957 GMC. Last episode we got that whole thing painted and fully reassembled. Well, this week it's finally time to hear that engine roar. First, we got a couple small projects to tackle. I'm going to be focusing my attention onto something that I'm excited about. This is going to be completely different than any bed we've ever done. We are not using wood, believe it or not, no wood. We are going to be using this stuff right here in my hand called Gator Step. It's well used in the boating marine industry, and we're going to be slapping some of this material down on the bed in here. So the first step is going to be throwing down a sheet of aluminum. I went with 1/4-inch aluminum. You could do steel, but aluminum is obviously going to be a lot lighter. Did want to go with a 1/4-inch because we didn't really add very much support back here. My plan was to use 3/4-inch plywood, but I guess this material doesn't stick to plywood. Fiberglass or metal, and I'm not working with fiberglass. So 1/4-inch sheet of aluminum. We're going to get some material cut, get this stuff drilled down, screwed down to our framing, and he's going to be coming and doing some scanning. So I'm excited. This should be pretty cool. Let's rock and roll. All right, we got our 3 main sheets of 1/4-inch aluminum cut and placed on back here. I do have 4 little tiny rounded corners to add. I know I could have actually cut this metal longer, but you wouldn't have been able to get all this out of a full sheet if I would have cut these shapes out of this section here. So what I'm going to do is just go back and cut some little tiny pieces like this that will kind of fall right in here, and I'll just go ahead and weld those together over my bench. I may even just bolt this section down and just maybe put 1 or 2 bolts in here. It's going to be kind of hard to unbolt or bolt this section once we're done. You know, I could access the back here, the front, without that panel pretty easily. So my thought is maybe just throw some tacks on the center panel. Once everything's set, I can just bring my welder over here and tack that down. It's going to be really difficult to ever get this out once the Gator Step is on there. In fact, it'll be impossible to do it and save the stepping. So I already got my 2 little pieces cut for the passenger side. We'll go ahead and template the 2 on the driver's side. We'll get those set in place. We'll get some timing marks on them, and we'll go ahead and pull these sheets out, take them over to the welding table, get those pieces welded on, and then we'll be able to bolt this down and move on to the next one. All right, we got our 4 little corner pieces all fit in. I got some timing marks on here, so that way when I take this off, I know exactly where we're going to be tacking these back onto these plates. I transferred my fuel fill up to the bottom of my plate. I got some general measurements, so it looks like it's going to be sitting right about here in the center of our aluminum sheet. We're going to be cutting a hole, 3-inch hole in here, inserting that, so we'll have a tube going from here to there. And that should work out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this sheet out, cut my 3-inch hole, get these 2 little corner pieces tacked on. Also going to drill out for fasteners, get some countersunk bit going on, and get this one back in. All right, we got all our 1/4-inch aluminum bolted down. We got our rear fender wells bolted in. We got our fuel fill hole cut. I'm gonna go ahead and get that thing finalized for now as well. That way, when the gentleman comes from Gator Steps, he's able to scan everything and have a placement where everything's gonna be. And then he's gonna go ahead back to his shop, and he's gonna cut this decking material. And I think I might go over there and check it out. I think you guys might enjoy that. Hey, why not, right? All right, it's time to move on to the back of the truck, our tailgate. This thing has to get repainted, but before I send it out to get repainted, we're going to be adding a hidden latch. These older trucks, there is no latch on them. You're basically using a chain to hold the tailgate shut and support it when you open it. Chains are cool, but as you guys probably could expect, it will scratch the paint. Even they do have a little rubber sleeve or plastic sleeve that goes around the chain, but eventually I think it's gonna end up ruining our paint job on our truck. So we found this hidden latch on Auto Metal Direct. It seems like it's pretty simple to install. You're just basically gonna be using some riv nuts to set these little brackets here on our tailgate, like so. You got a little pin that's gonna be bolted into the side of our bedside in here. So you can install this on a painted truck. There's no welding. It's basically just a couple bolts. Let's get this thing installed. All right, we got our hidden latches installed. We got our little straps on there. Tight, latches up real nice. Now we don't have to have our chain here. My only feedback or complaint with this system is obviously tailgates, you want to sit on them when you're at a show. And because these are riv nuts in here and they're actually aluminum, so I might pull those out, put some steel ones in, definitely a little stronger. I don't know, man. I'm 195 pounds. I'm sitting on it, but it does feel like eventually these inserts could pull out. So I'd suggest welding this thing on, or tacking it on at least, getting a couple tacks on it. All in all, it's a nice clean look for your 50s, or I guess they sell this for all trucks, but some of the later models like the 70s, 80s, square bodies, stuff like that, they don't have these kind of latches. They have an actual latch with a latch thing that goes through, and you know, that holds it on. So this is definitely a cleaner look. Now we don't have any chains hanging. Hindsight, you know, had I known I was going to do this in the process of building a truck, I would have gotten rid of all this, welded a patch here and made it look a little cleaner. But you know, again, things change as you're building these things. So looks nice, man. So you can pick these up on Auto Metal Direct. The company is Pros Pick Custom Truck and Street Rod Parts. So super easy to install. Took me about an hour. So that's done. Next step, I think I'm gonna make a panel to go ahead and close this up right here too. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull some measurements on this, and we'll go ahead and get a piece of 16 gauge cut. I'll probably slip it right inside in between our 1/4 inch plate and our frame here. Maybe I'll throw a little bead roll or something on there. All right, we got our rear panel all put in position. We got a 1/4 here holding it down on the bottom, and these 4 bolts, or 3 bolts rather, on the top of our aluminum sheet will hold this down. So now I just got to pull this out, body work it a tiny bit, and get this thing painted, and then we'll be able to add our bolts back in on the top of our aluminum sheet, which will sandwich it all down. And then I'll probably just paint this little lip on the aluminum sheet the same color that I'm going to paint this back panel.
All right, we're moving on with the assembly of our 57 GMC truck, coming down to the end where we're going to end up starting to wiring the truck. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Haltech. Awesome products. I've used them several times before. I've used them in my personal vehicles. We've used them here at S2S before. This time we're going with a Nexus R3. We've also got a flying lead harness to match the ECU. Went with a flying lead harness because we want to design the harness specifically how we want it to get the engine bay nice and tucked and keep everything real seamless. So Flying lead harness is the way to go when a lot of modifications are necessary. We've also got a handful of their sensors, a bunch of GM specific connectors that are going to be used in the harness, a couple of CAN bus hubs to connect all of our different devices. We are also using a UC10 dash, which is also CAN controlled. And the only thing that we don't have here is our power distribution unit. We are using their PD16. It's just not here on the table right now. That will also be included and be used to power all our devices and handle a lot of the switching functions. So, cool thing about the R3, it is also a power distribution. It has, I think, maybe 6 different channels for power output. I could be wrong, I think it's maybe 4 or 6, but anyway, we will be able to power everything on the engine with the R3. It's a good combination of products from Haltech to make any project come to life, so I'm really excited. Before I start installing, I want to figure out where everything's going to sit inside the car. We've got a bunch of different boxes that have to get mounted, so we'll look into getting that done, and then once that happens, we can move into actually laying wires and get everything connected. A lot of times you can make some cool brackets and stuff like that against the firewall or up under the dash. Inside the cab, everything's pretty compact behind these mid-50s, late 50s trucks. We've got our AC unit already tucked in there. Our radio is going to take up this space. So I've already started mounting some of the electrical stuff up under here. Made a small bracket for our AC controller. You can see it hanging out right here. It already has like a terminated harness, so I just wanted to keep it close and not out of reach for the length that's already provided. And we have a little start-stop switch control module behind the dash on the steering column mount. And then as far as all the Haltech parts and boxes, we're going to mount everything under the seat. And the reason I'm choosing to go underneath the seat is because there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 different boxes, a bunch of CAN connections, and it just would have been real messy running all the wires underneath the dash. And I'm just trying to keep the clutter away, and nobody really likes working underneath the dash anyways. Alright, everything's all smoothed out and sanded. I started marking out some holes and some patterns that I'm going to start using. I'm going to put some dimple dies in this. This is only a 1/8 inch piece of material, so I wanted to give it some rigidity so it's not just flopping around and bending. Yeah, there'll be stuff bolted to it, but adding some holes will definitely make it a little bit stronger. And also the holes in it will allow for heat dissipation as well, allowing heat to get past the metal and not soak into it, and keeping the components hot. So with these marked out, I'm going to start drilling some holes, and then we'll go to the press these guys out. Also, another thing, I have to hand drill a couple of the holes because when I cut it out on the plasma table, the cut process order, I didn't put the process in the proper order. So instead of it cutting the interior holes, like all the marked out holes, you see being all these here, first, it went and cut the exterior, the perimeter first, which with this thin material, it ended up bowing slightly, and it was high in the middle and low on the outsides, and so it missed the arc on the outer edges for my mounting holes here. So what happened is the gap for the arc got too big, and it wasn't able to make contact and create the holes. So I missed these 3 mounting holes on this side, I believe one of the holes over here for mounting one of the components, and then 2 of the 3 mounting holes on this edge. So we'll get those drilled out while I'm doing these holes for the dimple dies, and then we'll go, like I said, over to the press those out, and then we'll get our threaded inserts in it, and then we'll go ahead and bend everything. It's just going to be 2 bends on each end. Hot off the press. Here's the mount so far, looking good. Got all the templates, got it bent up, hold up. I have to get some attachment points through the floor, and then we'll mount everything onto it. All right, so finished with most of the fabrication stuff. Like I said, I'm still missing 2 of these components, so I didn't put any threaded inserts because I'm not sure what size the holes are, so I'm not sure which fasteners I'm going to use. But for now, the rest of these things are on here. You can see there's some free space on here for cable routing and mounting, and possibly if there's going to be any other secondary fusing besides our solid state PDM stuff. So basically now we're gonna start getting the mounting locations for the bracket. So here I'm gonna mark some holes out, get some mounting holes inserted in the floor so we can bolt it down, and then we'll continue on. Alright, so with the ECU mounted now, we can go ahead and finalize where we're going to go with our wiring harness for the engine. After some consideration, we thought about bringing it up here and popping it out of the firewall in this area, but instead of cutting a path for it through here and then maybe making some sort of plate or cover to cover the harness from it getting stepped on, we're going to go ahead and keep it underneath the seat, come down right here. Directly under this area, under the cab, is our transmission cross member. What we're going to do is come to this side of our drive shaft and also to the inside of the exhaust that's passing by here, drop directly down onto the cross member and then up onto the transmission housing. So finally got the rest of the harnessing and the electronics for our system. Got our PDM, our transmission controller, and we are ready to start getting the final wiring done. I've made my junction for the battery to come inside here to power all of our devices, and also our audio system that's going to be installed a little bit later. I've already started laying out our harness, which you saw I had out on the counter. Thinned it out a whole bunch, and I've also added in the harnessing for the transmission into this main engine harness to keep it nice and clean. So we only have one harness exiting the cab to control everything for the drivetrain. The next thing I have here is the body harness. You can see the PD16 is plugged in and located. Now I'm going to start designing how I want everything to be routed. Most of the stuff on the inside of the car is going to be connected here. Even the sensoring for our accelerator pedal is going to be used for the ECU. I'm going to start designing our harness like I had mentioned. Let me go out to the front in the engine bay real quick so I can show you the engine harness. Engine harness is already laid out as well. As you can see here, I've got everything cut to length and everything measured out where I want everything to land. As far as the locations, cam sensor, allotment here, alternator control, engine coolant temp. You can see our harnessing traveling down the transmission down there. I'll also be controlling our fans out of that harness. And then, obviously exterior lighting, and we have a trinary switch here that'll control a fan, as well as the compressor clutch. That's all being switched all through the PDM inside. So I'm gonna jump on that now and get this process going, and hopefully real soon we'll have this thing running and driving. While I'm working on all the harnessing for the truck, Mike is going to be finishing up on a couple of other projects, so I'll see you when we start this thing up. getting the wiring completed on the 57 GMC truck. You can see our engine harness is actually just about 100% complete. I've got everything terminated, almost, I'd say 90% of it terminated. I've left my injector leads unterminated. I want to make sure that I get them as short as possible, right, and as clean as possible, because our engine bay, obviously it's got the ITBs in it, and I'm trying to just keep everything very discreet, right? So trying to keep it as hidden as possible, really, so I don't want to have any extra like colored wire showing. So I'm hopefully gonna and try to cut these back as short as possible without showing any of the wiring, and trying to really just hide everything. So just trying to keep it real clean aesthetically. Working steady. Lee's been working on the interior. That's coming together. Electronics are mounted in here. We've started running a body harness on the underside of the truck. Not too much going on the exterior of the truck, but you can see all our wiring already up here. Got some of it running through the frame rail. It actually comes out just in the same place as the wiring harness. Here's our hole for our wiring harness here. Here's the body harness exit. Comes across the frame rail, inside the frame rail here, and then back out over here. I've got a couple clamps that I got to add here and up here, but you can see it comes over the cross member over the top of the axle, and now we just have to go to the front. I've just started working my way to the front here. As you can see, I've got our wiring kind of just hanging out right here, and I've got it running up here past our brake pedal, past the exhaust, on the frame rail, and over here. I'm actually gonna come back to this area, and I'm gonna make another breakout to come across the front suspension cross member back over to the frame rail, so we can get all the stuff on the right front side of the truck. So our headlights, running lights, DRL, and my horn is over here, as well as our trinary switch for the air conditioning. So gotta run a couple leads out to there in the fender. And yeah, it's pretty simple as far as body functions, so it should go pretty quickly. And then real shortly I'm gonna get that engine harness installed, and we'll be getting this thing running hopefully in the next couple days. So getting the engine harness tidy and mounted up on the engine. Last thing I'm doing is getting our harness terminated with our fuel injector connectors. Like I said, I was trying to dial in the length just right so everything was really aesthetically nice. So I've got minimal wire showing after our H-ring connection, and just the proper amount of wire, just enough to kind of tuck it away, and it's not really just flopping out here. So it's looking real good. Got to finish up the other side. Got to make some mounting provisions for some of the harness stuff. A couple little connectors here for our air conditioning system have to happen, but it's all coming together. Another thing that I have to do also is got this light here, this LED light, that's also going to be mounted directly in between the throttle bodies here, so I have to make some sort of mount. That mount is also going to be doubling as a mount for my intake air temp sensor. So I'm going to mount my intake air temp sensor kind of floating between the throttle bodies to get it as close to the induction air that it's going to be ingesting. So we have proper intake air temp for the air the engine is going to be consuming. So that's key. So we'll have a provision for that sensor, as well as mounting this light. We're going to just mount it facing down so it just kind of glows on everything. It gives the engine this cool presence. Just gonna keep finishing this up and getting that much closer to getting this engine fired up. Moving forward with getting the first startup on the 57 GMC pickup truck. I've got all of our ECU stuff communicating, double checked, got my ignition power already going. So now I know all this stuff is functioning. I made sure the injectors, drivers were working, nothing was mixed up. I used the Haltech ECU to be able to do that. And now we're just gonna fill the engine with all the proper fluids and get ready to get this thing fired up so we can make some oil pressure. I put just about 2 quarts in the tank. I'm gonna put all that in there via the bottle, and then I'll fill the rest of the engine capacity straight through the valve cover. This is a crate motor from GM, and it probably has seen oil pressure already, but it has been sitting around for a long time, and a lot of that oil and possibly even assembly lube has already made its way off the parts and into the pan. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it some insurance and add a splash of oil through our oil galleys, pressurize our tank, and wait till we see oil pressure on our gauge from our instrumentation, from our oil pressure sensor. You can see here, we've already got that thing pumped up and pressed it, pushing 30 PSI of oil pressure, so we know everything's nice and coated. We'll also crank the engine before firing it with just the starter to make sure we see oil pressure from the pump itself. Once that happens, then we'll go ahead and allow the engine to fire over by powering the injectors and the coils. So got some juice. I may have my starter fuse disconnected. Check. All right, so I went to go repair this or turn our main breaker on. As you can see, we've got a junction here for our starter, and there's a main breaker. But I noticed, you can see, there's fuel on the ground. So I'm gonna fix that fuel leak right now. Oh shit, I see another one over there too. Son of a gun. Check those out first. All right, so after a little bit of tweaking with some of the trigger configuration and fixing the fuel leaks, I think we're back to being able to fire this thing up. So we're gonna try again. We should be ready. I've got a battery charger on there because we're showing low voltage codes. Michael, hold that thing.
I got you.
Started, yay!
All right, guys, that's a wrap on the episode. Our 57 GMC is finally started, and boy, this thing sounds good, which is really good because next week we're gonna be loading this thing into the trailer and we're gonna be taking it out to C10 Nationals at Nashville Speedway. We still got a few things left to do to get this truck show worthy, like finish up that gator step in the bed, finish up some interior stuff, get our door glass in, and we're gonna be getting this thing out on the road. So make sure you like, subscribe so you don't miss out on the action next week. We'll see you guys. Peace.